Hello and welcome to the Metal Pack Pod, the industry's leading podcast for the global metal packaging industry. The Metal Pack Pod is brought to you by the Metal Packager, the number one digital resource for the global metal packaging market. With over 5,500 monthly users in over 130 countries, be sure to check us out on metalpackager.com. I'm your host Alex Fordham, and joining me today is Marc Hoche, Vice President / General Manager of CarnaudMetalbox Engineering. Marc is a mechanical engineer by trade after serving 10 years in the Royal Electrical and Mechanical Engineers, and then went to work in heavy industry, most notably for Caterpillar and Cummins. After gaining a business degree and an MBA, Marc then switched industries in 2013, where he began his career at CarnaudMetalbox Engineering as head of sales. He led the global sales and aftermarket team for 7 years before moving into his current role in January 2021. In today's podcast, Marc spoke at length about the company's capacity expansion on both sides of the Atlantic, the explosive growth of the metal packaging industry, and the current challenges with supply chain issues. Before we begin the episode, we must give special mention to our sponsors, PPG. We're proud to partner with you and thank you for supporting the Metal Pack Pod over these coming months. Their range of innovative and sustainable solutions enables its customers to protect and beautify the world. Now on to today's show. So Marc, as customary with the Metal Pack podcast, we've just got a set of quickfire questions for you. So if you're ready, I'll crack on.
Fire away.
So what is your favourite metal packaging product ever?
Quick fire, that takes a bit of thinking about, because I could say quite easily I'm a big fan of the can of water. I think that's one of my favourite things. I think that's a fantastic innovation, getting water out of plastic and into cans. I'm also a big fan of the ball tapered cup, which we are seeing quite a lot of lately, and we've been privileged to work with them on that. But I'm guessing metal packaging product, I mean, can I include machines?
Absolutely.
Because I like our can makers, I like the decorator, products full of innovation. That's what I like.
Fantastic. And so your favourite personality from the industry that you've either worked with or from another company?
Oh, crikey, another good one.
You've got to be kind as well.
So this guy's actually retired, but I struck a relationship with this guy from the first time I met him, and that's, do you remember Phil Skinner from Nampak?
No, I don't actually. It might well be a little bit before my time.
So Phil, I had a lot of respect for Phil. I met him and we instantly struck a good relationship because he has a hobby similar to mine, which is motorcycles, and former metal box guy, lifetime in the industry. And I met him when I was very new to the industry, and he kind of took me under his wing when I visited Nampak in the early days, and he was really, really a character.
This is one I suppose we'll touch upon later in the main body of conversation, obviously the elephant in the room as well, but the working arrangements, the old or new normal?
Oh, the new normal, I don't know. I think the old way of working, I'm maybe a bit of a traditionalist. When I think about people in the office, I like the hubble bubble and the noise and the atmosphere that the office environment creates. I do accept that we're probably never going to get back to that. And I think that from a work-life balance perspective, there are a great many people that do like this new kind of flexible way of working. And it's taught us to use technology. I think one of the good things that's come out of this is that we always talk about communication, right? So how important communication is. Well, when you're only communicating through one media, be it Zoom or Teams but generally by video, it just goes to make you think twice about how you're communicating, what you're communicating. And I think we've had to learn and adapt to that. But yeah, I think a hybrid way is going to be what everyone's going to tell you moving forward. Me personally, I'd love to see everyone back in the office. I really would.
That's one of those buzz terms, isn't it? The hybrid model that everyone speaks about, but I'm not sure everyone quite knows what that is at the moment. So it'll be interesting to see in the years to come whether this has been a turning point particularly for this industry. Next question is, so your proudest achievement personally within the can making sector?
Oh, crikey. Probably bringing the new factory online. I've worked for CMB since I changed industry, 9.5, must be coming up 10 years, something like that. And I joined CMB as head of sales, and I was head of sales for eight and a half years, and then I moved into this role. And the first thing I had to do here was, in fact, within the first week of taking this role, was sign the new lease on the new factory, and that was a very proud moment. Equally, getting the first machines laid down there some 6 months after a very significant refurbishment, and that was nice. I went down on 4:30 a.m. Saturday morning. I got up, I drove to the new factory, I stopped at McDonald's, I bought 20 breakfasts, and then went into the new factory and put all the breakfasts out for everybody that had worked really hard that last week running up to getting those first machines down. And we all sat there in it's a massive hall, what we call Bay 4, and we had 7 machines in there that looked dwarfed by the volume of the building, but we all sat round on these little stools and makeshift seats and eating McDonald's breakfast.
And so, in one sentence or phrase, what you think the biggest challenge for C&B moving forward in the next few years is?
The biggest challenge I can see right now is supply chain and parts. We have significant capacity. For the first time in a long time, we've got the orders, we've got the people, we've got the space, we've got everything. We just need a stable supply of parts to bring all that together. That and recruitment's also another issue. It's always been a perennial question, if you like, is how do you attract, retain and train the next generation of engineers. We've always invested heavily in our apprenticeship scheme, but it's over and above that, I think. So that remains a challenge, I think.
Excellent. There are a couple of topics there, supply chain issues, recruitment, that we're going to be getting on and having a chat about later. I think we could have a podcast alone on those two topics. So yeah, I'm really looking forward to that. And lastly, just is there an amusing story or anecdote that you can share about a funny time within the industry or person? Or I know you'll have to be careful with this one, so not to embarrass anyone, but it's always nice to try and hear if there's a amusing anecdote.
You asked me who I admired as Phil Skinner, so I think I can remember a time where we'd met, and actually we'd met in Turkey, and we'd had a good couple of days meeting. We were there for 4 or 5 days, I think. Well, the weekend before, I was racing my motorbike, and I had a little bit of an incident, which meant that I hurt my foot a little bit. And so Sunday evening, I was at the airport, met some colleagues, we flew off, we had 5 days of meetings, and throughout these meetings my foot just got more painful. It became more and more difficult to put my shoe on. Anyway, we got through the series of days and presentations and everything else, and we were back at the airport, and I was talking with Phil Skinner, and we were going over what I'd done with my foot, and we were talking motorbikes and the usual stuff. And then out of nowhere, looking, when you're sitting in the airport, you're looking at the screens for your flight, and it was saying, wait in there, wait, gate announced soon. And it went from like, don't panic to panic, because it said it come up in red, final call. Well, the gate was right at the other end of the airport. So there was me and Phil, sprightly as Phil is. So Phil's legging it down the concourse, dragging his bag after him. I've dragging my bag, but I've got a really painful foot this time. I'm this old guy and me, well, I might be the old guy, I don't know. We're hobbling along, pair of us trying to get to the plane on time, and we made it just as they were ready to shut the door, and we just shot in, and the door shut behind us, and we got on the seat. Well, I sat down, I had sweat just pouring off me all the way back. My foot was throbbing. I got home, I took my shoe off. My foot was like an aubergine. It was just massive and black and blue. I ended up going to the hospital. It was so painful. And I come out with a big plaster cast on because I didn't realise, but I'd broken my foot in 3 places, and I'd been hobbling around and running around all weekend. And dear Mr. Skinner did nothing but laugh at me.
We now have a quick break to check in with our friends at PPG. As sponsors of the Metal Pack Pod for 2022, we're delighted to have support from one of the industry's leading coatings and specialty materials suppliers within the industry. Here's a little snippet from the latest at PPG.
Experience the iSense family of specialty coatings. PPG iSense Specialty Over Varnishes. Help beverage brands stand out on the shelf with unique effects. A tactile finish with a dynamic effect you can see and touch. A velvety, deep matte finish. A satiny smooth, medium gloss over varnish. A white base coat that makes colors pop. A bottle can and cup over varnish that enables special shapes. And a luxurious finish that shimmers and shines. Proven performance, possibilities. Learn more at www.packagingcoatings.com/iSense.
So Mark, thanks for joining me.
Thank you. Nice to be here.
Absolutely. So just in pre-recording, we were mentioning about the fact that you guys are incredibly busy at the moment, probably unprecedented demand within the industry. It'd be interesting just to get your take on things really, and the overview within the industry. I mean, how do you foresee things at the moment? I mean, is this growth sustainable, would you say, or is this due to maybe the sustainability message that's been in the industry for the last few years, or has this been pandemic driven? Just nice to get perhaps a bit of an overview before we begin.
It's probably a bit of it all. I think you've touched on the key things there. I think yes, look, the sustainability message was coming out, and it was being vocalised by consumers more and more before the pandemic. We can thank Sir David Attenborough about for the Blue Planet 2, which really highlighted the issue with plastic. There's been legislation changes recently that have helped that on its way, I guess. And then you sort of get into the COVID era. Well, global pandemic or not, people weren't waking up in the morning, taking a shower and saying, do you know what I need in my life now? That's more plastic. So the message never really changed, pandemic or not. Now, what the pandemic did is it did change buying habits. I mean, obviously with lockdowns and, bars and restaurants and that being closed, people were consuming more at home. So I'm guessing, that was part responsible for driving volumes. And there's also been, the change in varieties of cans as well, So I can only speak a little about, can consumption. Obviously, we're machinery builders, so obviously I have an interest, but I know about the machines more than anything. And, when you look to the North American market, for example, what we see, an industry that we would ordinarily consider mature. They've been making cans in North America for a very, very long time, but they've been of a fairly standard can. So now, all of a sudden, we've got all these different varieties. I mentioned the ball taper cup earlier. That's a particular type of innovation, but sleek cans are becoming more prevalent in the US now. And because of the vintage of machinery out there, it's meant, perhaps while the demand may not have increased massively for us, if you need a new machine to make a sleek can, it's a machine sale. The volume's not necessarily grown, but for us it's a machine sale. So we have seen some growth in the Americas because of that, because of vintage of machines. So I think it's all of that. There's also a lot of new products coming to market now. I mean, hard seltzers have been in the news for some time. Craft beers have been in the news for some time, and energy drinks similarly. These are all people that are choosing the aluminium can as their primary source of packaging over plastic. So I think you've got a mixture of everything you said. I think you've got the anti-plastic sentiment that's going in the industry and has been for some while. You've got some change in consumer behaviour with the effect of COVID. You've got new shapes and variety of cans that can't be made on the older vintage machines, and you've got new products going straight into metal cans.
And I assume that's translated into equipment sales or increased demand for you guys. I know I've seen capacity expansion from a number of key equipment suppliers. Absolutely. And you guys are no different.
No, absolutely. We some of the things that come with this is it's a really good news story, right? What an industry to be in. It's absolutely fantastic to see the orders translating, as we have done. So we saw this demand growth that has translated into additional machine sales. So we needed to move quickly. We could see this was in fact going to be sustainable. We could see that there were signs there this was going to continue for some while. So we needed to remove the constraints of capacity. So we did move very quickly and significantly. So, the factory that we're in here now in Shipley, this is it's about 150,000 square feet. The new factory that we've just opened in Leeds, it's 10 or 11 miles away. And again, it is 150,000 square feet. So by moving our assembly from Shipley into Leeds, we've more than doubled our capacity. We've got machines being built in another facility that we call Hurstwood Works, which is a mile down the road here in Shipley. And that really has enabled us to do a couple of things. Firstly, as I say, double the capacity. And the space that we've now created in this factory here in Shipley means that we can now make some investments in our machine shop, and we can expand. We can buy new machining centres to enable us to bring more products, the manufacture of these products, back in-house.
Has that always been the plan, or has that purely been due to the increased demand within the industry? Is this a decision that's obviously not been taken lightly, but is this something that you've always considered before as a potential option? Because I know certainly pre-pandemic, I know we have to talk these days, we have to talk pre-pandemic, post-pandemic, don't we? But is this something that you've considered before? Because I remember having conversations with the likes of yourself, Andrew Truelove, and obviously the business has been growing. Your success with innovation and a number of your awards that you've won domestically. So is this, to cut a long story short, is this something that has been purely as the result of the growth within the industry, or has this been something long term that you've always seen as something that we need to grow at some point and make the opportunity to expand capacity?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's that, and the growth in the industry has just accelerated our plans. I think that's probably the best way to describe it. We, like you say, we have won the Queen's Award. We've won it a couple of times for international trade. Most recently, we've won it for innovation. But it's always been on our mind that expansion was the way forward. We've always had a strategy laid out, very clear strategy of where we wanted to get to. And as as our order book firmed up more and more, just going back through the years, as our order book firmed up more and more, we always did the things that we needed to do to expand, to make sure that we had enough capacity to build the machines. So, the first step we did was Unit 124, which is at the back here in Shipley. When we found we needed more space, we moved into there and we started assembling machines there. A few years later, when that was no longer enough, we moved into Hurstwood Works and we started assembling machines there. So every time we've seen a period of incremental growth, we've always expanded our footprint. This last one has been a significant expansion because the jump in our growth has been significant. So, and it's given us the confidence to make these investments.
And with that, we've seen some restructure within the business. I believe you're now Vice President of CMB, so congratulations on that front. So if you just perhaps provide a bit of an overview of how the senior management team has perhaps restructured as a result of this growth.
Yeah, sure. So a lot of people know Andrew Truelove. He has been in this industry a long time, and it's quite famed amongst our apprentices that Andrew was a CMB apprentice, and he made it all the way up to general manager level, so and beyond. So what's happened a year ago, well, more than a year ago, January the 1st, 2021, I took this role. Andrew took a new role within the organisation, so he still has oversight of CMB and our new CMB division, which I'll talk about in a sec. But he also takes some responsibility for some Signode operations, which is all part of our family, if you like. So with those new responsibilities, he took a step upwards, if you like. And then I too took a step upwards into the GM or VP's role of CMB here, so everything in the UK. Very shortly afterwards, we also brought together the tool shops that we have in the USA, HV and Wasota, and brought them more formally into the CMB group. And we also had an opportunity to get another facility in Lancaster, Ohio, which we have some plans for moving forward. So really now, as a division, sort of CMB is becoming more global. So in the UK here, we have the three main manufacturing and assembly facilities for the machines, along with our aftermarket businesses as well, and the training academy. And then in America, we have the two tool shops, HV and Wissota, plus Lancaster, plus Norwalk, which is our sales and parts office. And then, of course, we have our office in Shanghai. So it's really given us more of a global reach. So that's kind of how we've restructured. And we think we've got a really good team now to move this business forward.
And Andy Wilkinson in your old position as well as head of sales, and I believe he's, like you mentioned with Andrew Truelove, previous C&B apprentice. I suppose it shows the strength of, and something you mentioned in the pre-record session as well, about the fact that it is a challenge for this industry, and something we can get onto later about getting good people. And I think the fact that you're recruiting young people who stay with the business, and I think a lot of industry will be quite envious of that, because it is particularly a challenge for young people, because manufacturing is not always seen as particularly a sexy industry all the time, and all young people are into tech and gaming and all that sort of thing, and they want to get into those sort of careers. So I think the fact that you've got the apprenticeship scheme here is a real coup for you guys.
Absolutely, it's something we've always been proud of, and like you say, Andrew, former C&B apprentice, Andy Wilkinson, that is, he was, he's come up through that apprenticeship scheme. He's been engineering manager, and then I convinced him it was a good move to move across into sales to get some commercial experience, and he worked for me for a couple of years. And yes, as I moved into my new role, Andy moved into his. He brings a wealth of experience to that role. He's, as I say, former C&B apprentice. He knows all the machinery. As engineering manager, he's as technical as you want to get, and he is making his mark on that department. And I'm hopeful that fairly soon we'll all be back to travelling and jumping on aeroplanes, and more of the people in the industry will, if they haven't met him already, will get the opportunity to do so.
You mentioned about the fact about not being able to get onto aeroplanes and things like that. We are a global business, and it's been a challenge for us all with not being able to get out to see customers and things like that. So just curious to see how C&B have adapted over the past couple of years, because it is a complex operation, isn't it? So if you can just go into detail about how the business has had to adapt and evolve during this interesting period.
Yeah, it has been interesting, and it has been challenging. I think I've said before, maybe a little bit tongue-in-cheek, but I think if you were new coming into this business in the middle of the pandemic, we've been recruiting all the way through, and I just can't help thinking how hard it is for these people, because you're having to try and talk to people over video conference, and not being able to get on a plane to meet these people, and you might be responsible for people in different countries and not have the ability to travel and meet your extended team, and I wonder that how difficult that is, and how can we help people overcome that. The flip side of that is that those of us that have been in this industry for a while, we've had many years pre-pandemic to build relationships, and we have got some very strong relationships with suppliers, with our customers, and the fact that we've not been able to see these guys for a while, yes, it's been a challenge, but because we've got such strong relationships, the switch to using video conference has not been that difficult. Yes, we've had some fun with the technology. I mean, I think everybody's said this at least 3 times a week: you're on mute. I mean, that's one of the favourite things we see now. I think that's going to get entered into the dictionary, isn't it? You're on mute. So yeah, we've had to learn to deal with the technology, and we've had to think harder about how we communicate. But I really believe that it's the strength of our relationships that has carried us through these 2 years. And as soon as we can get back out and visiting people, and we will be, without a doubt.
Has there been a plan in place for post-pandemic world, so to speak? Or will there be less travel for you guys? And I was speaking to a few suppliers within the industry, and they've seen the fact they've been able to save a considerable amount of money with the reduction in travel. I know there's no constitute for face-to-face interaction and building those relationships, but maybe as a first port of call, or certainly on the service side of things, if you can tap in remotely, it is advantageous. So is that something that, from maybe a cost saving point of view, I know that when the industry is growing, perhaps that may take more of a backseat, but as perhaps the industry, maybe this growth slows down a little bit, and then costings is something that maybe companies want to look at. Is that something that you're mindful of, do you think?
Yeah, look, I think people, that's been, you know, when you're not travelling, you are seeing some savings there. But to not travel, I think, you know, especially like I say, for people that are new in the industry, I think it's important for people to forge these relationships. But look, I do think, you know, what we've learned through the pandemic and using video conferencing, it's a tool that's been around for a while, but we've never really had to use it. But I think there is a place for it, and far better than just a quick phone call or an email. It's far better and easier and quicker just to get somebody on a video conference now, whether it's Zoom or Teams or WebEx or whichever your platform you choose. It's far easier. So it's definitely got a place moving forward. I don't think you'll ever get away from, you know, meeting people face to face. I'm thinking from a customer perspective, you know, we sell complicated, expensive pieces of machinery, right? And they've got to work. And your customers have got to have confidence in you, your company, that you're going to deliver what you say you're going to deliver. That kind of level of relationship and trust is kind of hard to get 100% over Teams or Zoom. So I think there's no substitute for meeting in person and shaking somebody's hand and sitting down and doing business, presenting your products and negotiating a contract or whatever it is. But there is a place for the video conferencing moving forward. We've all learned how to use it. We're all getting very proficient at it. You mentioned service. I mean, that's a great example of where we've had to adapt our offering, especially when traveling in the height of the pandemic, when traveling wasn't possible. The fact that we can do these things remotely has been very good, and we've had to think on our feet very quickly about how best to use this technology. You know, people have got cameras on their phones these days and to video machines or what have you, and send that back to our service department and have our service department fault finding remotely. We've invested in some headset cameras, so you know people can wear the headset in the plant and it plays on a big screen back here in Shipley. And we can have service engineers looking at the screen, effectively seeing what the guy in the plant is seeing, and being able to offer advice on how to set things up or take something to pieces or make a repair. And that's been quite effective. We've done similar with the academy as well. You know, we can't have people flying into the academy to do the training, so we've developed a lot of online material to deliver that way. So yeah, we've had to learn and we've had to adapt as everybody, I guess.
No, absolutely. I mean, we talked about sort of mostly positive messages here at the moment with the growth within the industry. Obviously, with growth and success, challenges come with it as a result. And I know, particularly at the moment, the issue of supply chain for all business, even for consumers, I think it's a big challenge. So I assume that is no different at C&B, and that's something you're trying to navigate as well at the moment.
Yeah, absolutely. It's one of the biggest challenges we've got right now. It's the thing that keeps me awake at night, and that's, you know, a constant supply of parts. You know, in doubling your capacity, we can now deliver more than we ever have been able to in the past. To do that requires a steady and guaranteed supply of parts to the assembly line, and that has to be robust. Now, you know, the growth in the industry have caught some people off guard, particularly if I think sort of back a couple of steps in the supply chain. You know, we've been talking to our suppliers for a long time saying, look, we're growing, we need you to grow. The honest truth of it is that some of them have risen to the challenge, but some of them haven't, or haven't grown as quick as we would have liked them to. You know, we are making investments in the machine shop with the new space that we have by moving our assembly out into the new factory. We've got space now in the Shipley factory to expand in new machinery, which we need to do for several reasons, and one of which is to bring more component manufacture in-house. And just to ease that burden on the supply chain a little bit more, if we can make more in-house, we should get a steady flow of parts coming through. And so that is a real big concern right now. And again, we're having to be creative. We are an engineering company, we're engineers, and we all like problems to solve, right? So, where we haven't got a particular component, we've been looking to see, are there alternatives on the market? What else can we bring in from other industries? Something that's not been seen in can making. Can we bring these parts in? Can we adapt them? Can we make something new? Can we do something differently? And we've been pretty successful. We, even through the shortages that we've seen, we are still shipping machines, and we're still, we're delivering and not letting our customers down. We're still starting up lines in accordance with our customers' plans. And, if we weren't being so creative and innovative in what we do in our solutions to part shortages, it would be a different story, I can assure you. So it has been challenging, but like I say, we're an engineering company, and that's our job to find solutions.
Are you shipping on time though? I know there's a big issue within the industry on lead times. Is that is there anything you can share with us as sort of the standard CMB lead time on orders? I know there's been a huge backlog for a number of suppliers. I suppose that you've been able to negate that as a result of the capacity expansion, but I'm guessing there still is a bit of a backlog.
Not so much a backlog. I think what kind of happened really was that, yes, lead times did move out, and that was a factor of capacity. You can't put a machine into a cell until the one that's there is shipped. Extending the lead times didn't really come out of parts supply issues or supply chain issues. The extension of the lead times was everybody wanting everything at the same time, and quite clearly, you couldn't fit all that in. So what we needed to do is get closer to our customers, talk to our customers about their plans, explain to them the situation, and our customers have been very responsive. Obviously, they need to grow to satisfy their demand. This is where our demand comes from, obviously. And so they are able to, where they are able to, they have been very forthcoming in giving us much more visibility of a forward order book than we would have ever have seen previously. So it's about manufacturing slots now. So, the further out we can see, the easier it is for us to deliver on time for our customers. The more planning we're able to do in advance, the more pre-ordering we can do in advance. And all these are just different strategies for getting around supply chain shortages. So, that's what we're having to do. And there are some benefits with that. Of course, the further out you can see, the more confidence you've got that the growth is there and it's going to continue. That gives you confidence for investments, for recruitment, and all of that good stuff. It does come with some challenges, like you say, because on the surface it does appear that your lead times are going out, but the longer notice we get, the better chance we've got of delivering to meet everyone's expectations.
And is there an issue with increasing costs? So raw materials costs, parts costs. We're seeing it across society globally now, aren't we? That one customer puts their prices up because they've had to, and then they pass it on to another. They pass it on to another, and then ultimately the end consumer ends up paying the brunt of it, really. But is that something that you've had to adapt? And is there increasing costs for your customers, I suppose, for can makers?
Absolutely. Look, it's everywhere. You just have to switch on the news now, don't you, to hear whether it's petrol prices, gas prices, cost of living increases, everything's going up. And again, there's been a number of factors in our business. Brexit has impacted things like steel imports. So they were part of the Brexit deal was to put tariffs on steel from the EU, or not so much tariffs, rather quotas. So once the quotas are up, they're up. That was all geared around getting the British steel mills up and running again. But of course, the price point at which that becomes viable has shifted because gas prices have moved. So, steel and raw material has been an issue and subject to surcharge. you've got the whole unfortunate situation in the Ukraine right now. So I think we all took for granted how significant Ukrainian exports were into Europe, and I think we're only just now realising the impact of all of that. It's also impacted freight. A lot of China would ship via the rail link on the old Silk Road that come through Russia. Now that's all stopped. It's pushed more freight onto sea. The ports are congested. China's response to COVID has meant further delays in the supply chain. And as we all know, when things become scarce, they become more expensive. We have done a fantastic job of trying to mitigate these costs. We've done what we can, as I mentioned just earlier, about the visibility of the forward order book gives us confidence to make more investments. Part of that is in inventory, buffer stock, all that kind of stuff. So we were able to do some of that. We're able to mitigate some of these inflationary pressures. We're all hoping that they're transitory, that they're high at the moment, but they're going to drop back down as we get through the rest of this year, as things start to return to a degree of normality, particularly post-COVID, as things sort of start to settle down again. So everything we can do to mitigate these costs we are doing. Where we are not able to, then yes, unfortunately, it's a hard fact of business. These costs have to be passed through, and so yes, the things are becoming more expensive.
Yeah, just the way of the world, really, isn't it? I think, but hopefully, certainly sounds like CMB are in a good position to minimise those costs as much as possible. And I think the growth within the industry probably does mitigate that for the time being, at least. I mean, I don't want you to play clairvoyant, but I'm guessing this industry growth. Do you foresee this as a 3 to 5 year explosive growth, particularly in the US, or is this longer term? I mean, how do you foresee, particularly on the equipment sales side, the industry trend of growth within the industry, or do you see things perhaps levelling off, particularly in the beverage can sector?
Yeah, again, it's difficult for me to sort of say. I haven't got a crystal ball. I wish I had, but look, it has been explosive. I mean, that's a good way of putting it. Actually, it's been beyond all expectations. If you'd have asked me in 2018, what did I think the growth rate would be for the industry, we were all talking about 3.5% to 4.5%, compound annual growth year on year going out the next 5 years. Then all of a sudden, back end of 18 into 19, and then from there on, it has been explosive. It's that's for sure. How long will it continue? Again, a very good question, and probably for some while yet. I don't think that we are where we need to be. I think there can be some things that might prolong that growth. You asked me before what my favourite metal packaging product was, and I'm a big fan of the water in cans. I think that's when you think about how many PET bottles of water are consumed a day, to put that in a can, it fascinates me because there's a big psychological barrier to get over, right? We're fortunate in this country, you can drink water out of the tap and it's free, right? So if you're now going to buy something that's free, psychologically, you want a clear package because you want to look at it and you want to know it's pure, because you can get it out the tap for free, but you're actually in a shop now buying this. And so to get it into a can, I think, is a fantastic thing. And if you've seen the can of waters, they're either the sparkling's black and the still waters in a white can. And I think they're very, very good labelling on these cans. They're not overly complicated with artwork. They're very almost simplistic in their design. And I think that's tried to get the consumer over this hurdle that if you're buying something that's free, you want to know that it's pure. How do I know it's pure? Because I want to hold it up and look at it. But to get it into a can, I think, is fantastic. Now, if that takes off more than it has done to date, and we start to see more and more of the water coming out of PET and going into cans, then I think that one change in consumer behaviour alone will keep demand for cans. And for me, machinery, it will keep it going for a good many years yet. So I think it's probably going to continue as it is, perhaps midterm, and then maybe a little bit further out, maybe 5 years, it has the potential to sort of slow down back to the rates that we were probably predicting in about 2018. But all you need is something like, water coming out of plastic and going into aluminium cans, and then just that shift alone will keep this industry at this level of growth for the foreseeable.
You also see Ball's aluminium cup, which has had tremendous success in the US, and with the launch in the UK and Europe as well. There's potential there for growth in that regard as well. So the future definitely does look bright. I think it's just a case of whether sometimes an industry, when I said this to Brian Sneed, and he had an interesting take on things as well, and it was a case of perhaps an industry is when it's at its strongest, it's also at its weakness, because things like innovation, R&D maybe take a back seat because it's all about the here and now, making sure you're almost keeping your head above water with demand. So, I mean, is that something CMB are mindful of? Has innovation and R&D taken a back seat during this period because it's all about getting the orders out the door?
No, not at all. Quite the opposite. A good example is, obviously I've talked now about the new factory in Leeds, in Wortley, and the additional space that it's given here, where we're making new investments in new machining centres here in Shipley. We've also more than doubled our R&D square footage, if you like. So that's a good sign of how much R&D we've got going on right now, how much we foresee R&D being an integral part of our business moving forward. The fact that, as I say, we've more than doubled the space that we previously had allocated for R&D. So yes, we've got some exciting stuff that we're working on right now. Everybody talks about Industry 4.0 and what's their approach to Industry 4.0, and I think there's some stuff there that's really interesting, really exciting. There's things that we have in other industries that we almost take for granted now. So, for example, your car tells you when it wants a service. So why can't our machines? The technology's there. Why can't we bring this technology forward? We also talked a little bit about the issues that we have about the next generation of engineers into this industry. Well, the generation that's kind of growing up now, it's like you give a 10-year-old an iPhone, he don't need any instructions. Yeah. They just intuitively know this touchscreen drag and drop sort of technologies. It's so intuitive that, as I say, 10-year-olds with an iPhone don't need instructions. So why wouldn't you build that kind of technology into your machines? Why would you not try and simplify the operation of your machines and use technology that's familiar for this generation that's growing up right now? So, these are things that we're very mindful of, fitting sensor arrays to our machinery so the machinery can talk to you. That's going to be a big thing moving forward, and using, like I say, technology that's familiar to people. So,
is that tough though? Because can makers are traditionally known as ambivalent to change, and when you're talking about high speed, high volume, just a simple small delay can be very costly. So it's all well and good bringing in these innovations, but in practice, is it feasible, or is it a case of just slowly chipping away with these innovations and changes until it becomes the norm? With those that have always grown up with the tech think it's second nature.
Yeah, I think it is a little bit of that, isn't it? You talk to all the can makers, and every can maker has their secret recipe of what's the best solution, how best to make a can thinner, lighter and faster than anybody. That's the game they're in, right? So innovation, big bang innovations, I'm not sure the industry adopts rather readily. It's more of an incremental approach. We won the Queen's Award for innovation, and we won that for our spray machine. And so that's taking servo motors. So rather than using a mechanical drive, we now use servo motors to drive the machines. Now, servo motors are not new. They've been around for many, 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 many years. And so to bring this technology into a machine that's really quite simple is one of these examples of incremental innovation, because servo motors have been around for ages. It's a very simple machine. Fit a servo motor to this machine, and all of a sudden you've got some features that were not possible. We can now use regenerative braking technology. So when the machine's slowing down, we can capture that electricity and we can use it to power the next machine in the bank. We can control so finitely the spray machines themselves so that we can save customers money on the amount of lacquer that they're spraying on the inside of the spray machines. And it can be altered all wirelessly via there's an app we can put on an iPhone, so you can do it from an iPhone, you can do it from a tablet. You don't have to be standing at the machine to make these adjustments. And so there's stuff like that you think, oh crikey, that's, for a seasoned can maker, that's what, adjusting a spray machine from my phone, but these are the kind of things that are there. And the big thing about these spray machines is in terms of sustainability, they operate on 75% less power than a standard mechanical spray machine would. So, it's got some pretty green credentials there as well, if you're not requiring the same amount of power to power these machines. So that's got to be good, right?
You mentioned green credentials. Is there anything else you'd like to add with what CMB are doing to ensure, I know we're a sustainable industry, but also from an equipment supplier's point of view, is that something you're, I assume, continually mindful of?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the spray machine is just one example there. I mean, we taken a similar approach with our decorator. That's all servo motor driven, so the same sort of benefits exist there. In our machinery, we're always looking at this regenerative power is quite key. We can do some good things with our control panels within the body makers. We introduced, probably about 5 or 6 years ago, sort of standby mode on the machine. So it's quite similar to your car. When you pull up at the traffic lights, and if all the conditions have been met, your car switches off. And then when the lights go green, you put your foot on the accelerator and your car starts again and off you go. Well, we can put very similar stuff on all of the can makers. So that kind of start-stop technology exists, and we've been doing that for quite some time. Again, that's all about using less power. We've got lots of trials underway now about how to cut down on air consumption, because air is like a hidden cost to our customer. So we're working on those lines. From a factory point of view, we are doing lots of things in the factory to minimise energy usage, to recycle. We have zero to landfill schemes and things like this. The new factory in Leeds has actually jumped up a couple of grades on its energy efficiency because of the new and modern heating system that we have in place. So, we're very conscious that, if we are selling an environmentally friendly package, as in our customers are selling an environmentally packaged an aluminium container, then, the machinery that produces it has to be equally as sustainable.
Absolutely. I just want to end just on your vision and CMB's vision for the future. Is there anything else that we can look forward to, or is there anything you'd like to share with us about how the company's going to continue to adapt and evolve in the next few years?
Well, we mentioned the decorator. I mean, I've spoke several times at conferences about our decorator, so I think it's been kind of long awaited. We kind of went quiet through the COVID situation because we had planned a whole series of customer events to bring customers in to see this machine working, but obviously COVID kind of stopped that. It didn't stop our development, however. That machine is now running in production, and we are very excited about it. We talk about innovation. There's lots of innovation on the new decorator. Even from a health and safety point of view, there's so much you can do with this machine more safely than any other decorator machine out there, and that's been brought about by technology and the use of servo motors and what we can do controlling the machine from HMI.
You're referring to the reformat decorator? The
reformat decorator, yeah, that's right, yeah. I don't anticipate it being much longer before we can talk about that in a commercial sense. I know it's been a long time coming, but For everybody that knows CMB knows we like to get things right. We are perfectionists. We are, as I said before, an engineering company, but we're very, very close now with that machine, and it's really exciting. So, yeah, watch this space. There's more stuff to come as well in terms of machinery development. So, yeah, it's an exciting place to be right now. I can't think of another industry where I would want to be right now.
And that's a great place to end. So, really appreciate your time, Mark, and thanks for the chat, and look forward to speaking with you soon.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you to Mark and the team at CMB for making this podcast happen. This has been the first time we've been able to conduct a podcast face-to-face since launching the Metal Pack Pod, obviously because of the COVID-19 pandemic, but it's been great to get some face-to-face interaction, so to speak, for once. It certainly seems an exciting time to be at CMB, and Mark's analysis of, I don't know of another industry I'd rather be in right now, is striking and supports the notion that for metal packaging, our time is now. It's certainly up to all of us to ensure this momentum is truly capitalised on. Please do like our podcast and follow us on social channels. We'll be back real soon for our next podcast. You take care now.